A private jet lands at an airport in Europe. A luxury SUV is waiting nearby. Bodyguards stand beside the runway. Everything about the scene suggests one thing. Someone important has arrived. And in a way, they have. Because the man stepping off that aircraft is about to become one of the most talked about people on the internet. Not because of who he is, but because of who people think he is. At this moment, nobody is suspicious. Nobody is investigating. Nobody is asking questions. They're impressed. Who is this man? Somewhere else in Europe. A woman opens Tinder. Just another evening, just another swipe. Thousands of profiles, thousands of strangers. Most disappear immediately. One doesn't. His photos seem different. Luxury hotels, business meetings, private aircraft, international travel. The kind of life people usually only see through a screen. And without knowing why, she swipes right. One swipe, different from everyone else. Online dating is built on first impressions. And this man understands first impressions very well. Every photo seems to tell the same story. Success, travel, influence, access. Not through words, through images, because people trust what they can see. 1 hour on a private jet can cost between $8,000 and $15,000. Luxury hotel suites can exceed $3,000 per night. Yet he moves through that world as if it were completely normal. Who is this man? Then something unexpected happens. The conversation moves quickly, much quicker than most dating app conversations. An invitation arrives, not coffee, not dinner, travel. And suddenly, a stranger from a dating app no longer feels like a stranger. He feels familiar, trusted, important. Is this normal? If you're enjoying this investigation, subscribe to Vanto Crimes. For the first few weeks, everything feels perfect. Travel, conversations, experiences. Then one day, the phone rings, and for the first time, he sounds different. Not confident, not relaxed, concerned. The kind of tone you immediately notice. Is this normal? A different side. Until now, he always seemed in control. The type of person who could solve any problem. Now he's talking about pressure, complications, unexpected issues, nothing dramatic, nothing outrageous, just enough to feel unusual. In other words, the situation isn't so extreme that it immediately triggers alarm bells. It sounds like the kind of problem that could realistically happen to anyone. And that's exactly why it's believable. Then comes a small request, not a shocking request, not a life-changing request, just temporary help. One woman would later describe the first amount as being around $5,000. Another recalled a request closer to $7,000. Large enough to matter, small enough to feel manageable. And that's what makes it interesting. $5,000, $7,000. Why people said yes. Now if you're thinking, I would have said no. That's exactly what makes this story fascinating, because by this point, trust already exists. Weeks of conversations, shared experiences, travel, memories, and trust changes how people evaluate risk. The same request from a stranger feels suspicious. The same request from someone you trust feels very different. At first, the problem gets resolved. Everything returns to normal. Then another issue appears, then another, then another. And for the first time, a question quietly enters the story. Why do these problems keep happening? Is this normal? Most problems eventually end. A delayed payment gets fixed. A dispute gets resolved. Life moves on. But this situation feels different. Every time one issue disappears, another appears. Not immediately, just often enough to feel unusual. And eventually, Someone notices. Is this normal? Then another request arrives. This one feels different, not because of what is being asked, because of the amount. The numbers are starting to grow. One woman would later describe sending approximately $12,000. Another recalled requests approaching $15,000. Still not enough to trigger alarm, but enough to create discomfort, and discomfort leads to questions. If you're still watching, you're about to reach the moment where one search begins unraveling everything. Subscribe to Vanto Crimes for more investigations into deception, power, and crime. $12,000, $15,000, then something happens. Not a major discovery, not a dramatic revelation, just a small detail. A story doesn't quite match. A timeline feels off. An explanation raises another question. Nothing definitive. Just enough to make someone wonder, what if there's something I'm missing? Something doesn't fit. Most people never investigate someone they trust. Trust removes the need for verification. But once doubt appears, verification becomes irresistible. So one woman opens her laptop and starts searching. A name, Simon Leviev. A photo, a few details. Nothing complicated, just curiosity. And curiosity is about to become a problem. Something doesn't fit. At first, nothing unusual appears. Then she finds something. Not evidence, not proof, a person. Someone she has never met. Someone in another country. Someone asking questions remarkably similar to her own. Another woman, living in a different country, asking the exact same questions. At first, it feels like a coincidence. Then another woman appears, and another, and suddenly, coincidence becomes much harder to believe. Another woman, another country. Same questions. At first, nobody wants to jump to conclusions. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. But the more they talk, the harder that becomes to believe. Because the similarities keep appearing. The same promises, the same emergencies, the same explanations. Even some of the messages sound almost identical. Same stories. The women begin comparing everything. Dates, locations, photos, messages. And that's when things become uncomfortable. One woman shares a photo. Another immediately recognizes it. Not because she's seen it online, because she's received it herself. Then another photo appears, and another. The same private jet, the same luxury hotels, the same lifestyle, different women, same image, same photos. Then someone brings up money, and suddenly the conversation changes. One woman mentions around $25,000. Another says the amount exceeded $40,000. Another describes debts approaching $50,000. For a moment, nobody says anything, because everyone is realizing the same thing. They're not discussing isolated incidents. They're discussing a pattern. $25,000, $40,000, $50,000. Everyone focused on the same questions. Is he telling the truth? Is he really wealthy? Are these emergencies real? But now, a different question appears, a much more dangerous one. Where is the money coming from? And for the first time, nobody has an answer. Where is the money coming from? Then one woman says something simple. What if we're not separate stories? What if we're part of the same story? And suddenly, everything starts fitting together. The timing, the requests, the explanations, the emergencies. For the first time, they begin to suspect something much bigger is happening. Not bad luck, not coincidence, something else, something deliberate. We are part of the same story. Now journalists begin asking questions. Victims compare evidence, screenshots, messages, bank records, travel timelines, and slowly, the image begins breaking apart. The perfect lifestyle, the confidence, the success. Everything starts looking different. The pattern emerges, then the breakthrough arrives. Not all at once, piece by piece. A message here, a transfer there, a timeline, a photograph, until the picture finally becomes clear. The luxury lifestyle wasn't simply attracting trust, it was creating it. The private jets, the luxury hotels, the expensive dinners, the exclusive experiences. They weren't just symbols of success, they were evidence. Evidence that convinced people this man was exactly who he claimed to be. The image created trust. That's how it worked, and then comes the realization. The moment everything suddenly makes sense. According to victim accounts and investigations, money from one relationship often helped maintain the image shown to another. The luxury wasn't necessarily proof of wealth. It helped create the illusion of wealth. And suddenly, the flights make sense. The emergencies make sense. The requests make sense. Everything fits together. Trust to money, money to image. At this point, many people ask the same question. How did nobody see it? But maybe that's the wrong question, because this story wasn't built on stupidity. It was built on trust. Trust built over weeks, sometimes months. Trust reinforced by conversations, experiences, photos, consistency. Most people imagine scams as obvious. The most effective ones rarely are. They feel believable. And that's exactly why they work. Trust changes everything. By the time the story became international news, millions of people were asking, how could this happen? Maybe the better question is this: how many people would have made the exact same decisions if they had seen the exact same life, the exact same experiences, and the exact same promises? Because the most dangerous lies aren't always the ones people are forced to believe. Sometimes, they're the ones people desperately want to be true. Comment below, would you have spotted the warning signs? And subscribe to Vanto Crimes for more investigations into deception, power, and the psychology behind crime. Because the next story begins with something just as ordinary and ends somewhere nobody expects. Would you have seen it? Subscribe for more.